Hey everybody, I see here. There's a lot of talk going on about the possibility of establishing term limits for both the House and the Senate. I wanted to find out what started the fact that the president is limited to only 2 4-year terms. So I did some research, and in 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II, and under the leadership of Harry S. Truman, a joint resolution 27 was proposed and passed to limit the presidency to only 2 4-year terms. And in 1951, it was reestablished as the 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and at the time there was only 48 states, and the ratification was passed by 36 out of the 48 states, imposing the limit to just 2 4-year terms on the presidency. Now, here's the kicker. Why is the presidency limited, but the Congress and the Senate is not? There was a statement made back when they imposed the term limits on the presidency that the power of that kind of power in the hands of one person for a long period of time would create corruption. There's something to that effect. So, if the House and the Senate passing the ratification with the states of only 2 terms for the presidency because they fear corruption, why is it there are no term limits for the Senate or the Congress? I mean, Biden was in over 50 years. Chuck Schumer's over, 47, 48 years now? Dianne Feinstein? What's her name? Maxine Waters? I mean, the list goes on and on. Pelosi. And it's almost as though these people don't want the president to have too much power, but they want to have the power and continue to get elected. So I can see why term limits would be beneficial for the nation. Just think about it. Let's use AOC as an example. She was elected to Congress in 2018, I believe. She barely had enough money to afford an apartment in D.C. as well as maintaining her residence in Queens, which is where she was represented. And now in 2024, last I read, her net worth is around $10 million. So how can you go from barely affording to pay your rent with a $174,000 a year job to having $10 million in the bank within, 5 years? It's questionable. And it's not limited to just Democrats either. There's one of the Republicans from out in California. His net worth is over $200 million. So it really comes down to is how are these people getting rich and why are they still maintaining their positions in office? If, for example, you outlaw lobbyists from being able to speak to congresspeople and senators, and you say that bills that are being presented have to be individual bills, or you put a limit on only 5, maybe 10 items within a bill, and it can be no more than a couple hundred pages instead of these 5,000, 6,000 page bills that these people keep sticking in to be signed into law when no one actually reads the things, which is a corruption of power. And If you got to start holding these people accountable, and you got to start imposing term limits. They said that when Pete Hegseth was going for his hearing before the congressional committee or senatorial committee, and I think it was Elizabeth Warren was saying, well, you're saying that no retired general can work for the defense industry for a period of 10 years after they leave office. And you have to admit that makes sense, because if you're already embedded as a military officer, you're a senior officer, you know what's going on, and then all of a sudden you're working for the company that's selling the weapons and the technology to the military, you're basically padding your own pocket, and you're putting your own personal needs over that of the nation. So I can understand that. And when she accused him, saying, "Are you going to, turn around and not join the defense industry?" He looked at her and says, "I'm not a general." Common sense. I mean, he's not. He was an officer, but he was no longer. He's in the reserves, I guess. But the man's got 2 Bronze Stars. He's not a coward. He's a fighter. And so I can understand with, him actually supporting term limits. Nobody is supporting term limits on the Democrat side at all, because they worship power. And they use their positions in the government to intimidate other people. And that's, it happens in all politics, I guess, but I think maybe it's time we actually start holding these people accountable, because face facts. On January 6th, people going into the Capitol building, okay, not a smart idea. However, 2 things come to mind. First, that is not a private building. It's not private. It's a public building. It belongs to the people that, with their tax money, paid to have that created and maintained. So in that regards, they have every right to enter that building. Every right. And the people in power, the congressmen, the senators, they're afraid of having to deal with the people on an equal basis, because they don't know how to do it. They're all talk and no action. I'll do this and I'll do that. And then when it comes time to actually fulfilling their promises, they ignore the people and they do whatever, the lobbyists want them to do, or what they feel is going to put their best interests at heart, instead of what the voters want. So you had that going on January 6th, and Ashley Babbitt, who was a female veteran, flanked on 2 sides by Capitol Police officer and a 3rd Capitol Police officer by the name of Bird, I believe, shoots her and killed her for no reason. She was an unarmed trespasser. So she's being murdered for trespassing into a building that is technically she owned. She's a taxpayer. She pays her taxes. That building belongs to her and every other U.S. citizen. So it's very confusing. But it's another reason for, term limits, because think about this. A year after that guy killed the young lady, he got promoted for that very action of killing an unarmed woman. He was promoted. So we have to have term limits. We have to have accountability. And we have to impose, my idea anyway, that any new law that some state wants to present to be passed, it has to go through a voting process with the citizens within the person's respective state. If you can hold special elections, you can hold elections over particular laws, that are going to be applied for each respective state. Maybe it's time for the people to actually have a voice, because, face facts, the people that are elected, that are sitting in those offices, I have yet to see them do what the people want. Good example, Lindsey Graham. People want everything that Trump wants, and he's speaking out against it. Same thing with Mitch McConnell. Lisa Murkowski, who turns out her father was, her father appointed her to be the senator. I guess he was a Democrat. She's a rhino. So, and Susan Collins. I mean, they're not Republicans. They're basically Democrat rhinos. But needless to say, this is what my opinion is. We need term limits. I would recommend for the Senate 8 years. No more than the president, 8 years. For Congress, 6. Oh, and by the way, if you're not in office for more than 10 years, you don't get a retirement. Serving the people is voluntary. You're not in it for the benefits. You're in it to serve. I see out.